I came across a video of one of the governing body members of Jehovah's Witnesses explaining in excruciating detail just how much he hates outsiders, people who aren't a part of the religion. More specifically, people who don't like the religion and have no interest in joining. So if you know somebody who isn't interested in joining the religion, he had some choice words to say about you. Let's get into it. Before we get into it, I just want to mention a couple things. If you've heard this before, skip forward about 60 seconds. I just added some new stuff to my Etsy store. Since I exited the Jehovah's Witness religion, I always wanted to celebrate Christmas. It's something I wasn't allowed to do, a part of society that I missed out on. But I could never find ornaments that reflected how I really feel. So I made some. As some of you know, I have a 3D printing business. These are my latest products, Christmas ornaments for ex-cult members. So far, I have 5 ornament packs. Here's the first one. Here's the second pack. The third pack is an atomic A, a satanic star, and the flying spaghetti monster. Here's the fourth pack. And finally, the fifth pack, March of Progress and Coincidence on 34th Street. Of course, you can check out my Patreon too, but putting my ornaments up on your tree would be awesome. Okay, with all that being said, let's take a look at the first clip.
However, the apostates and the enemies of Jehovah would say, well, that's gruesome, that's despicable. You teach your people these things? No, God teaches his people these things. This is what he's foretelling. And frankly, for friends of Jehovah God, how reassuring that they're finally going to be gone. All these despicable enemies that have just reproached Jehovah's name, destroyed, never, ever to live again. Now, it's not that we rejoice in someone's death, but when it comes to God's enemies, finally.
Now, I'm not really sure what he's reading from or what he's referring to, but I think I can take a pretty good guess. My guess is he's reading from Jehovah's Witnesses literature that he proofread and approved, about what's going to happen to me and you when the last days come, something he's apparently excited about. Let's take a quick look at what they say about apostates. This is from their website under the apostasy section. It says, this term in Greek comes from a verb literally meaning to stand away from. The noun has the sense of desertion, abandonment, or rebellion. Huh! Interesting. Is that what it means? Notice they said it has the sense of desertion, abandonment, or rebellion. What does it actually mean? Here's the etymology of the word apostate. Middle English, from ecclesiastical Latin apostate, from Greek apostates, meaning deserter or runaway slave. So I wear the term with pride. I wear it as a badge of honor. I consider myself a runaway slave. And I'm not the only one. I would imagine the writer of the book 30 Years a Watchtower Slave, William Schnell, probably felt that way too. But I guess Jehovah's Witnesses want to use the more open term because you don't have to have been a member to be considered an apostate. Anybody who's critical of or rejects the religion is considered an apostate. So I guess the deserter meaning would apply to allies, and runaway slave meaning applies to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are kind of broad with how they define apostate nowadays. Like I said, it pretty much applies to anybody critical of the religion in any way, but they have a little section at the bottom of this page describing the qualities of an apostate. So let's give it a read. It says, lack of faith, lack of endurance in the face of persecution, abandonment of right moral standards, heeding of the counterfeit words of false teachers and misleading inspired utterances, and trying to be declared righteous by means of law. Not quite sure what that means. It goes on to say, while still making profession of faith in God's word, apostates may forsake his service by treating lightly the preaching and teaching work that he assigned to followers of Jesus Christ. So if you don't go door knocking, I guess you can be labeled as an apostate too. That doesn't really surprise me. Then it says, they may also claim to serve God but reject his representatives, the visible part of his organization. Of course, that means them. So they've set up a system where they can't be questioned. If you question them, then you'll be punished by having everything and everybody you ever loved taken from you, permanently. It says, apostates often seek to make others their followers. Often? Interesting. So I guess they have this down to a science. They must have the statistics. It says, such ones willfully abandoning the Christian congregation thereby become a part of the Antichrist. As with the apostate Israelites, destruction is likewise foretold for apostates from the Christian congregation. So that's how they feel about apostates. Apparently anybody who isn't taking door knocking seriously, anybody who's critical of the religion, or more specifically, critical of this guy right here, Tony Morris, is, well, how did Tony put it?
Destroyed, never, ever to live again. Now, it's not that we rejoice in someone's death, but when it comes to God's enemies, finally.
In case you haven't picked up on it yet, they tend to use the terms God and governing body interchangeably. They do it that way because they claim they're God's mouthpiece on earth. But what he really meant to say was my enemies. He probably figured that would be a little too on the nose. Let's continue.
Finally, they're out of the way, especially these despicable apostates who at one point had dedicated their life to God, and then they joined forces with Satan, the devil, the chief apostate of all time.
What he's specifically trying to communicate here is that he'll rejoice when all apostates are finally gone and unable to criticize him for the questionable decisions he makes, like buying hundreds of dollars worth of alcohol with money donated to them for the preaching work. On a Sunday at 11 a.m., when he expected every good Jehovah's Witness would be at the Kingdom Hall, and they'd be unlikely to catch him. But he was especially talking about the apostates who were baptized at one point. Not just the critics, but the people who were a part of the religion and left it behind, like me. So guess what he's acknowledging here? He's saying you can be an apostate too. You don't even have to have been a part of the religion. Just think Tony Morris believes some horrific stuff in your set. You can wear it as a badge of honor too, just like I do. Let's continue.
So, in conclusion, let's go back to that opening psalm that we looked at here. Just to help this verse stay in your mind, we hope. Verse 20, just to emphasize this, but the wicked will perish, the enemies of Jehovah will vanish like glorious pastures. Particularly, they will vanish like smoke. So I thought this would be a nice memory aid to this verse stay in the mind. Here's what Jehovah's promising. Okay. That's Jehovah's enemies. They're going to vanish like smoke.
Again, they tend to use the terms God and governing body interchangeably. They aren't Jehovah's enemies they're worried about. They're Tony Morris's enemies. Jehovah's supposed to be all-powerful, right? He shouldn't have any enemies. Not one that really poses a challenge. They're Tony's enemies. Those are the ones Tony cares about. That's a pretty powerful illustration. It says a lot about how these people think, how they view outsiders, the constant fear they must have. There's a demon behind every corner. This isn't the first time they've talked about apostates. This isn't even the worst they've said, surprisingly. A Watchtower article about apostates came out a while back, and it was so inflammatory that it actually caught international attention. This is an article from independent.co.uk. It says, quote, "The official magazine for Jehovah's Witnesses has described those who leave the church as mentally diseased, prompting an outcry from former members and insiders concerned about the shunning of those who question official doctrine. An article published in July's edition of the Watchtower warns followers to stay clear of false teachers who are condemned as being mentally diseased apostates who should be avoided at all costs." This is straight from the Watchtower. This is what the governing body said. Suppose that a doctor told you to avoid eye contact with someone who's infected with a contagious deadly disease, the article reads. You would know what the doctor means, and you would strictly heed his warning. Well, apostates are mentally diseased, and they seek to infect others with their disloyal teachings. They literally think there's something wrong with our brains. They didn't come out and apologize for that position. It's what they believe. They stand by it. Imagine what my mom thinks of me because of this religion. They have a book where they go into exactly how you're supposed to treat a disfellowshipped person. Bear in mind, this isn't how you treat an apostate. This is how you treat a standard disfellowshipped person, even if they still believe it. The book is called Keep Yourself in God's Love. Ironic title for a book that covers this subject. Anyways, the book says, quote, "Is strict avoidance really necessary? Yes, for several reasons. First, it's a matter of loyalty to God and His Word. Remember, they use the term God and governing body interchangeably. It's a matter of loyalty to the governing body, to the religion. But they want the members to really feel the words they're saying. They might question it if it was a suggestion. This isn't a suggestion. This is the governing body speaking for God. Let's continue. We obey Jehovah not only when it's convenient, but also when doing so presents real challenges. Love for God moves us to obey all His commandments, recognizing that He is just and loving, and His laws promote the greatest good. I just want to point out that an ends justify the means mentality is one of the defining characteristics of a cult. Doing something bad to get a good end result is wrong. Jehovah's Witnesses call this theocratic warfare. Scientologists call it fair game. Lying, cheating, and manipulating is okay as long as it's in service to the group. Literally anything goes, as long as you're doing what the governing body wants you to. Let's keep reading. Second, withdrawing from an unrepentant wrongdoer protects us and the rest of the congregation from spiritual and moral contamination and upholds the congregation's good name. When you're telling my mom whether or not she's allowed to talk to me ever again until the day she dies, I feel like the congregation's needs should be on the back burner. In fact, they shouldn't even be a consideration. Let's continue. Third, our firm stand for Bible principles may even benefit the disfellowshipped one. By supporting the decision of the Judicial Committee, we may touch the heart of a wrongdoer who thus far has failed to respond to the efforts of the elders to assist him. Losing precious fellowship with loved ones may help him to come to his senses, see the seriousness of his wrong, and take steps to return to Jehovah. This paragraph is kind of nuanced. When they say unrepentant wrongdoer, that isn't as cut and dry as they want to make it seem. When I was disfellowshipped, I was genuinely repentant. I still believed it. I wanted to stay in the religion. For reference, I'd gone to a party in high school and smoked a cigarette. I was so repentant that I actually told them what I did. I came to them and said I felt terrible about it. If they hadn't disfellowshipped me, then maybe my life would have taken a different course. The elders decide if you're repentant or not. And in some cases, whether you're repentant or not, they'll disfellowship you anyway. Which is probably what happened to me. So don't let them pull the wool over your eyes and make themselves seem merciful by qualifying it with only unrepentant wrongdoers. In the end, being sorry for what you did has little to do with the verdict. 6 people in New York shouldn't have this much control over people's lives. That's what really makes this a cult. That's the qualifying factor. How much control they have over people's lives. Thanks to this dude and 5 others, I will never have a relationship with my mom again. Ever. She'll die not knowing who I am or what I've accomplished in my life. Probably not even caring. She'll have a funeral at the Kingdom Hall where I won't be invited, and I'll die never knowing who she was either, because of Tony Morris and his buddies, because they speak for God, and God said I'm mentally diseased. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. As I said before, I have new Christmas ornaments for sale because I can celebrate Christmas now. I have some other stuff for sale too. I sell retro game stands and 2020 dumpster fire candle holders and a bunch of other stuff, so give it a look. You can check it all out by clicking the link in the description and the pinned comment, as always. Okay? Thanks for watching, guys.